Now, the Varnam is a very important compositional form, because it is expected, and many traditional Varnams do fulfill this expectation, that a Varnam should encapsulate all the major features of that raga. So, a Varnam in Saveri or in Kalyani, it will incorporate all the major features of that particular raga. So, for instance, this is very characteristic of Saveri. Sari gari sari sagari sagari gazari dasari mappa darapa mari mapada. So this actually gives a very clear blueprint of the raga, as it were, how the raga, how the swaras are formed into phrases, which note is emphasized, which is shaken, and how. So the Varnam offers a blueprint of the raga, as it were. So it has, so teachers emphasize the necessity of need of learning and internalizing many Varnams in order to gain mastery over Carnatic music. So we have, on the one hand, the importance of Varnam, because it showcases the raga in a succinct and a fairly exhaustive way. On the other hand, it is also important from the point of view of laya, of tala. A Varnam, the traditional Varnams, are composed in such a way that we have patterns of 4s and 3s and 5s. If you remember, we spoke about the jatis, right? We can have a pattern of 4, we can have a pattern of 3 or 5. Now, a Varnam, the composition as such, brings together many of these, all these patterns in an aesthetic way. For instance, this is Sarasudaya. So far it is 4. Ta 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 ta. These are all 4s. Ni ne kori. So far it is all 4s. So suddenly it goes into 3s. Tak 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 tak. So so this is 3s. So this is how these patterns are interwoven, whereas the lyrics are also brought together with such patterns. And Carnatic music, the texture of Carnatic music is such that it is filled with these patterns. There is a tightness to the structure of, to the texture of Carnatic music. You have very little relaxing of the laya, of the tala. So if you have Sarasudaya, it has to go in that tempo. All the words, the notes have to fall accurately and precisely where they are supposed to fall. Now this is, for instance, if you take a look at Khayal, Hindustani music, It's a very different musical form, because that kind of tightness is not there in Hindustani music. If you have to sing a khayal, there is a certain amount of laxity or freedom there. You can call it laxity or you can call it freedom of how the words and the tala are woven together, how the two are juxtaposed. Here in Carnatic music there is a tightness, and Varnam, learning a Varnam the proper way, gives you a good grounding in how that texture can be brought out. Speaking of tala, most Varnams, Tana Varnams, you will find predominantly they are in Aditalam. There are also very important and some very great Varnams composed in Atatalam. Atatalam is one of the Suladi Saptatalas. Atatala, Kanda Jati Atatala. Atatala will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is also a tala that is used in Varnams, and we have some great traditional Varnams in Attatala. Now, an interesting feature of Attatala Varnams is that the Yedupu, where the composition starts, is always here. There is 1, 2 on the third matra. Attatala Varnams always start on the third matra, and that Yedupu is maintained. Now, Varnams are compositions that offer great scope for, of course, for realizing a raga's potential. But there are some Varnams which also have some very interesting and challenging swara patterns. For instance, this is in Kalyani. So this pattern this is a swara in Kalyani Varnam in Atatalam. You see how the swaras jump. There is a lot of movement in this Varnam, and it's a very good Varnam to practice. Ni da magada magari magari ni da gari magani da gama padani pada magada gapa mani da sani sada ni ri ni da mada magari ni ri ni sa dani sari gama padani chiruno. So this is a Charana Swara or Ettukada Swara, which is there in this Adatala Varnam in Kalyani. And no talk of Varnams can be complete without mentioning the Atatala Varnam in Bhairavi. Now this is a composition of Pachimirian Adiyappa, who was a court poet in the Maratha ruler at Tanjavur in the 18th century. He was in fact the guru of one of the Carnatic trinities of Shama Shastri. And this Varnam, it starts in a very sedate way and it builds up in a very beautiful way. And a rendition of this composition is here, you may listen to it. This is the Pallavi of the composition. The rest of it you can hear in this link. Now a Varnam, there is a certain way of presenting a Varnam in concerts that is quite unique to the Varnam. No other composition is presented the way the Varnam is, and the presentation fully showcases the two parts of the Varnam. So, a typical presentation of a Varnam will follow this way. First the Pallavi is sung, then the Anupallavi. That is normally together they make about 4 lines of 4 avartanas of the composition, and then the Muktai Swaram is sung. After which you go back to the Pallavi and sing it at twice the speed, and then come back, finish the entire thing, finish the entire Purvangam, and then come back to the Pallavi, go back to the original speed. And then the Charanam is normally sung at a very different, unrelated speed, very often, but it is usually at a much faster speed, and the Charanam Swaras, Charana Swaras or the Yetikada Swaras are sung, and the Charanam line is repeated after each of the Yetikada Swaras. Now actually traditionally there was for many of the Varnams, traditionally there is another Sahitya line or text that follows all the Yetikada Swaras, and that kind of provides a link back to the Charanam line, or sometimes even the Pallavi line. But these days, the way in contemporary Carnatic music, the Anubandhas are almost always not heard. So to demonstrate, sometimes what happens as an interesting exercise, the Tishra Nadai is also performed in Varnams. Let me just demonstrate a bit. So Tishra Nadai is, so suppose it's the same Varnam I will take, it's Sarasuda. This is the first speed. The second speed will be so 2 avartanas of the composition will fit into a single avartana of that tara. So what in the first speed took 2 avartanas to sing, we will sing it in 1 avartana in the second speed. What happens in Tishra Nadai is so 3 lines of the text will be fitted into 2 avartanas. What is happening is actually 3s are fitted into the, what happens 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Instead of that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Here instead of that 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. This is what is happening when you do Tishra Nadai. So the song, the composition remains the same, but we are fitting only 3 units into each matra. So where it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, we are fitting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So the laya remains the same, the tempo remains the same, the song also remains the same. There is no tampering with the song. It is not that a syllable is elongated here or shortened there. The song is also intact, the avartana is intact, the tempo is intact. But how the words are distributed within each matra, that is different. So this is actually what we are doing is Tishra Nadai, Tishra Gati. We are doing a Tishram of the Varnam. This is something that that in fact was also part of Drupad practice. Drupad is a North Indian style of music, and what is called Tigun, it's called Tigun in Drupad, and traditionally the Drupad composition was supposed to be rendered in Dugun, twice the speed, Tigun, thrice the speed, and Chaugun, four times the speed, the original speed. Now that was part of the presentation of Drupad. Though nobody presents it like that these days. Perhaps audiences have no taste for rhythmic excitement. But in Carnatic music, we even in Carnatic music, actually Tishram and all are more or less very rarely heard. And this Tishram also has a place in another kind of presentation called Ragam Tanam Pallavi, which we will see when we come to it. But a Varnam presentation is essentially follows this way, that Pallavi, Anupallavi are sung, and then the Swaras are sung, and then that whole Purvangam is repeated at twice the speed. Sometimes the Tishram is also performed, and then we go to the Charanam, there is a Uttarangam, and the Swaras are sung. Sometimes we even perform a few Manodharma or Kalpana Swarams in Varnam. As a rule, Manodharma elements do not find a place in Varnam as a rule, but Varnams do offer scope for especially Kalpana Swarams. We will now listen to a presentation of a traditional Varnam in Riti Gaule. This is an Attatalam, and the musicians are Ramakrishnan Murthy on the vocal, R.K. Sri Ram Kumar playing the violin, Arun Prakash playing the Mridangam, and Aniruddha Atreya playing the Kanjira. So please listen to this Varnam.
ni pa ni ni sa ni ga ri ga ma pa da pa pa ma ga ri sa ga ga ma pa da pa ma ga ma pa ma ga ri ga ma ni da ma ga ma ga ri ri ga ri sa ni pa ni sa ni ga ri ga ma pa da pa pa ma ga ri sa ga ma ni da ma ni sa ga ri ga ma ga ri sa ni sa ga ri sa ni sa sa ni da ma ga ri sa ni da ma ga ri sa ni sa ga ma varna daksha da da ma ga ga ma pa ga ri sa ma ga ri ni sa ni ga ri sa ni da ma ni sa ga ri sa ma ga ma ga ni da ma ga ma ni sa ni ga ri ni sa ni da ma pa ga ri sa ni ga ni di di ki ni ve di ka ni da ma ga ma da da ma ga ri ga ma pa ma ga ri sa ni da ma ni sa ni ga ri ga ma pa ma da ma ga ri ni sa ga ma pa ma ga ri sa ni da ma ga ma ni sa ni sa ga ma ga ri sa da ni da ma ga ri sa da ni da ma ga ri sa ni ga ni